Have you ever done something that seemed like a good idea at the time? Something wild, thrilling, a little bit risky, but as soon as it happens, you regret it more than you can even put into words? This is the story of how I thought an open marriage would be a fun experiment, and now I'm stuck in a nightmare I can't wake up from. 2 weeks. I gave him 2 weeks of freedom, and I wish I had never said those words. You're probably wondering why. What happened in those 2 weeks that made me question everything? Well, let me take you there. Because I never expected this would be the one decision that would shatter my entire world. I remember the day I said it. We were lying in bed, the room lit only by the soft glow of the moonlight through our window. We had just finished a glass of wine. There was a certain calmness in the air, like the world outside our little bubble had stopped spinning, leaving just the two of us, me, my husband, and our seemingly perfect life. But then, out of nowhere, I said it. What if we tried an open marriage? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. I didn't even know where they came from. All I knew was that I had been thinking about it for a while. Something in me wanted to test the boundaries of our love, stretch it to see how far it could go before snapping. The silence that followed felt like it could suffocate me. I could see the surprise in his eyes, the way his brow furrowed as if he was trying to decide whether I was joking or serious. And then, he said it. Are you sure about this? He asked with a mixture of curiosity and caution. I don't know why I wasn't scared. Maybe I was confident, maybe naive, or maybe I was bored. But I told him, 2 weeks, that's it. No more, no less. Just 2 weeks where we can do whatever we want, no questions asked. It was supposed to be just an experiment, a harmless flirtation with temptation. He agreed. And for a moment, I felt like I had control. But control is the one thing I lost the moment we opened that door. At first, it felt exhilarating. I was excited. I felt empowered. It was like I was walking through life with a secret. We were both excited by the idea of exploring the world outside of our marriage. The first few days were the rush I had been craving. I could flirt with strangers without guilt, and I could see him enjoying the same freedom. It felt like we were playing a game, a dangerous game where no rules applied. But then, the phone calls started, the texts, the late nights. I felt something shifting, something that wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to be lighthearted, something to spice up our lives. But with every text he sent, every conversation he had with someone else, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. It was supposed to be fun, right? But why did it feel like we were drifting? And that's when I felt it, the pull of jealousy. It started small, a whisper in the back of my mind, but soon it was roaring. I caught myself staring at his phone one night. I couldn't help it. I wasn't the type of person who would normally snoop, but something about this situation, it had me spiraling. It wasn't until I saw the message that I knew we were in trouble. He had sent something that wasn't just flirtatious. It was personal. I could tell by the way he was responding to her. It wasn't just about sex or fun anymore. There was emotional intimacy, there was laughter, and there was something in the way he looked at her in photos, something I couldn't deny. It was different. The worst part? I was the one who had suggested this. I was the one who wanted him to explore, to be free. But now, I was the one feeling trapped in a cage of my own making. When I confronted him about it, he apologized. He said it was just a mistake, that he didn't mean for it to go that far. But the truth was, I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Was he lying to me? Or was this just what happens when you give someone too much freedom? It only got worse from there. The more I saw him getting attention from other women, the more I hated myself. I hated that I had allowed it to happen. I hated that I had made him feel like I wasn't enough. I thought I was strong enough to handle it, but I was wrong. The next night, he came home late, later than usual. He smelled different, like perfume. It wasn't mine. That was when it all hit me. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I just stared at him, asking if he was with someone else. His hesitation was all the answer I needed. I felt sick. I felt exposed. The worst part? He didn't understand my pain. He couldn't see how his actions were tearing me apart. How could he not see it? How could he not feel the same betrayal I was drowning in? 2 weeks. That's all it took. The freedom that had seemed so enticing now felt like a prison I couldn't escape. When the 2 weeks finally came to an end, I expected things to go back to normal. But they didn't. How could they? He came to me, trying to act like everything was fine, like we could go back to how it was before. But how could we? The damage was already done. I had seen things, heard things, felt things that I couldn't forget. And neither could he. He wasn't the same man I had married. He was someone else now, someone who had been with other women, someone who had tasted freedom and wanted more. I didn't want to hear the excuses. I didn't want to hear that it was all my fault because I had opened the door. I didn't want to hear anything that justified what had happened. The only thing I wanted was to go back in time and take it all back, to rewind and erase those 2 weeks before they could destroy everything we had built. But I couldn't. I was stuck. Now, looking back, I can't help but wonder what the hell I was thinking. Why did I ever think that opening up my marriage would be a good idea? It was a terrible mistake, one that cost me more than I can explain. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep my emotions in check. But the truth is, I was fooling myself. I didn't know how much I loved him until I saw him with someone else. I wish I had never said those words. I wish I had never asked him to try something so dangerous, so reckless. Because now I don't know if we can ever go back to the way we were before. I don't know if our marriage can survive this. I don't know if I can survive this. And now I'm left with a broken heart, a shattered trust, and a life that will never be the same again. But maybe, just maybe, you can learn from my mistake. Before you make a decision that could change your life forever, think carefully. Because the consequences of playing with fire are sometimes more than you can handle. Trust me, I know. The days after those 2 weeks were like walking through a fog. It wasn't that the air was thick or difficult to breathe. It was that everything felt distant. I could see him, but I couldn't feel him. We were in the same house, but our connection was gone. The bed we once shared felt colder now, the silence between us louder than ever before. I kept thinking that this would pass, that we would find a way to move past it. But every time I looked at him, I couldn't ignore the images that flashed in my mind. The way he looked at her, the way they touched, the way he smiled like he hadn't done with me in so long. It was like a dagger to my heart every time I tried to pretend everything was okay. One night, I caught myself staring at him, watching him in a way I hadn't done in years. I wasn't admiring him. No. I was analyzing him, wondering who he was now, who he had become. The truth was staring me right in the face. I didn't recognize him anymore. He wasn't the man I had married. He wasn't even the man I thought I knew. And it hurt. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I couldn't find the words. What could I possibly say? I had given him the green light. I had asked him to test our boundaries, to test the strength of our relationship, and now I was paying the price. He tried to act normal. He tried to pretend like nothing had changed, like we could just pick up where we left off. But I couldn't. Every time he kissed me, every time he touched me, all I could feel was the ghost of someone else, someone who was no longer a part of us. I watched him more closely now, scrutinizing every little detail. What he said, what he did, who he was with. It wasn't healthy, but I couldn't stop. I had opened the door to this chaos, and now I was trapped in it, suffocating under the weight of my own decisions. But I couldn't confront him. Not yet. I had to figure this out on my own. I had to understand if I could ever trust him again. I remember the first time we tried to talk about what had happened. It was awkward. It was forced. He sat down across from me in the living room. his expression a mix of guilt and uncertainty. He didn't know what to say, and honestly, neither did I. "I know you're hurt," he said, his voice quiet. "But it didn't mean anything. It was just an experiment, right? We agreed on it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. The words that came out of his mouth sounded so cold, so detached. How could he not understand? How could he be so numb to what I was feeling? He couldn't possibly understand the betrayal that was churning in my stomach. To him, it was just a phase, a temporary thing that he could walk away from without a second thought. But for me, it was everything. It was my trust, my love, my future that had been shattered in a matter of days. "I don't think you get it," I said, my voice shaking. "It wasn't just a fling for me. It wasn't just some experiment. It was real. And now everything feels different. You feel different." He looked at me, confusion in his eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." I didn't know what to say after that. What was there left to say? It wasn't just the act itself. It was the lies, the emotional distance, the broken connection between us. Could I ever feel the same way about him again? Could I ever look at him the way I did before? I wanted to believe that we could recover. I wanted to believe that the man I had married, the man I still loved, was still in there somewhere. But every time I thought about the 2 weeks that had passed, the more distant he seemed. He wasn't the same person I fell in love with. And worse, I wasn't the same woman either. Days turned into weeks, and slowly I started pulling away. It wasn't something I planned. It wasn't something I even wanted to do. But every time we were together, there was a distance I couldn't cross. The intimacy we once shared, the closeness that made us a team, was gone. It was as though a wall had been built between us, brick, by my own hand. I tried to distract myself. I threw myself into work, into hobbies, into anything that could keep my mind off the painful reality of what we had become. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape it. Every time I was alone, the thoughts would consume me. I could still hear his voice, the sound of his laughter with her. The image of him kissing someone else, someone who wasn't me, haunted me, and I couldn't shake it. The thing was, I wasn't sure if I was more angry at him or at myself. I had opened that door. I had told him it was okay to step outside our marriage. I had given him permission to explore, to look for someone else. How could I blame him for doing exactly what I had asked of him? But I did blame him, and I hated myself for it. One night, about a month after it all started, I came home to find him sitting on the couch, his eyes red, his face pale. He looked broken. For a second, I wondered if he had finally realized what he had done, if he had felt the weight of the destruction we had both caused. But then he spoke, and I felt my world crumble once more. "I've been seeing her again," he said quietly, almost too quietly. His voice was full of shame, but it didn't matter anymore. It was like a dagger to my chest, twisting deeper with every word. "What?" I managed to croak out, even though I knew what he was about to say. "I couldn't stop thinking about her," he whispered, his eyes filled with regret. "I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust, but I can't stop. I'm sorry, but I'm in love with her." And there it was, the moment that shattered everything. The moment when I knew that no matter how much I wanted to fix this, no matter how much I wished I could turn back time, this was the end. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat was tight. My heart was in my stomach. I was numb. I didn't know who this person was sitting in front of me. I didn't know how to process what I was hearing. He didn't even apologize this time. There was no excuse. There was no, "I made a mistake." There was just the truth, staring me in the face. I had opened up our marriage, and in the process, I had lost everything. The person I thought I was with, the love I thought I had built, was gone. That night, I packed my things. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing, but I couldn't stay there. I couldn't live in a house with someone who had shattered my heart, my trust, and everything I thought we were. I left. And as I drove away, the finality of it hit me. There would be no turning back. There would be no reconciliation. It was over. And the worst part? I wasn't even sure if I could ever forgive him. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust anyone again. It's been weeks since that night, and I'm still trying to figure out how to move on, how to heal, how to rebuild. I thought I knew what I wanted, but I was wrong. I thought I could handle the truth, but the truth was that I wasn't as strong as I thought. And now, as I sit here alone, all I can do is reflect on the biggest mistake I've ever made, proposing the idea of an open marriage. And for anyone watching this, let me tell you, if you're even thinking about it, don't. Trust me, it's not worth the heartbreak. So now, here I am, trying to pick up the pieces of my life. I thought I knew what I was doing, but in the end, I just lost everything. So ask yourself, before you make a decision that could change your life forever, do you really understand the consequences? Because once the door is opened, there's no going back.